Welcome, classical music lovers. Today, I'm taking you on an epic journey through the life of Franz Liszt, the virtuoso pianist who not only mastered the keyboard like no other, but also revolutionized music and captivated Europe with his charisma and genius. In this video, we'll explore every facet of this genius. From his humble beginnings in a small Hungarian village to becoming a superstar who sparked passions and controversies. Get ready for a story full of talent, love, scandals, and unforgettable music. If you stick around until the end, I'll share a selection of the best books for musicians to help you dive deeper into the world of classical music. Subscribe if you enjoy the video and join me on this fascinating journey through Liszt's life. Franz Liszt was born on October 22, 1811, in Rating, a small village in the Kingdom of Hungary, then part of the Austrian Empire. His father, Adam Liszt, worked as an administrator for Prince Esterházy, the same patron who had supported Joseph Haydn decades earlier. Adam was an amateur musician. He played the piano, violin, and guitar, and had a keen ear for music. But it was his son who astonished him from a very young age. At 6, Franz would listen to his father play the piano, not only memorizing the melodies instantly, but also transforming them, improvising with a creativity that left everyone speechless. This wasn't just a childish hobby. It was the spark of a budding genius. Adam recognized his son's talent and decided to devote himself entirely to nurturing it. At 7, Franz began formal lessons with his father, who taught him the fundamentals of piano and music theory. But Rating was an isolated place, and Adam knew his son needed an elite education to reach his potential. Here came the first major obstacle. The Liszt family lacked the resources to afford a move or studies in a big city. Adam, however, was determined. He secured the support of Prince Esterházy and other local nobles, who, impressed by young Franz, funded the family's dream. In 1822, at just 11 years old, the Liszts moved to Vienna, the musical capital of Europe. In Vienna, Franz studied with two giants, Karl Czerny, a disciple of Beethoven and one of the best piano pedagogues, and Antonio Salieri, the legendary composer who had been Mozart's rival. Czerny was amazed by Franz's technical skill, but also by his ability to improvise and bring every note to life. Salieri, meanwhile, taught him composition, helping him structure his musical ideas. At 11, Franz gave his first public concert in Vienna. The audience was ecstatic. A critic wrote, "This child is a miracle, a talent that will shake the world." Even Beethoven, rarely impressed, attended one of his recitals and, moved, kissed him on the forehead. That gesture stayed with Liszt forever. But not everything was magical. Life in Vienna was expensive, and the family continued to face financial struggles. Adam, aware that Vienna was just the beginning, decided to take an even bolder step, to bring Franz to Paris, the cultural epicenter of Europe. In 1823, at 12 years old, Franz said goodbye to Vienna, leaving behind a city that already hailed him as a prodigy. But Paris would be a new challenge, one that would test not only his talent but also his resilience. When the Liszts arrived in Paris in 1823, Franz was 12 and his talent was already the talk of musical circles. His recitals in the private salons of the Parisian aristocracy made him an instant sensation. They called him the Little Mozart, a title that reflected his supernatural skill and youthful charisma. But the path wasn't easy. The Paris Conservatoire, France's most prestigious musical institution, denied him admission because he was a foreigner. It was a harsh blow, but Adam didn't give up. He hired renowned private teachers, such as Ferdinando Payer and Antoine Reicha, to continue Franz's training. These masters refined his technique and helped him explore composition, laying the foundation for his future as a creator. Franz's recitals in Paris weren't just concerts. They were social events. High society, writers, painters, and musicians vied to see him perform. But what made Liszt unique wasn't just his virtuosity. It was his stage presence. He changed how pianists performed. Instead of playing sideways, as was customary, Liszt positioned the piano facing the audience, showcasing every movement of his hands and every expression on his face. His performances were a spectacle, a fusion of impeccable technique and raw emotion. The audience didn't just listen, they felt. However, this innovation also drew criticism. Some accused him of being too theatrical, of turning music into a circus. Liszt, far from backing down, pressed forward, confident in his vision. In 1827, Franz's life took an unexpected turn. His father, Adam, died suddenly of typhoid fever. At just 16, Liszt became the breadwinner for his mother. He stepped away from the stage for a time and focused on giving piano lessons in Paris. It was a dark period, marked by sadness and financial pressure. But even in adversity, Liszt found inspiration. During this time, he fell in love with Caroline de Saint-Cricq, one of his students and the daughter of a French nobleman. Their romance was passionate but brief, as Caroline's family deemed Liszt unworthy due to his humble origins. This heartbreak left a deep mark on Liszt, reflected in the melancholy of his early compositions. Paris, however, offered more than just disappointments. It was in this city that Liszt met figures who would shape his career. Victor Hugo, with his passionate literature, inspired him to seek emotion in music. Hector Berlioz, with his innovative symphonies, showed him that music could break molds. But the encounter that changed everything was with Niccolò Paganini in 1832. Seeing the Italian violinist, whose technique seemed to defy the laws of physics, ignited a spark in Liszt. "I want to be the Paganini of the piano," he declared. From that moment, he dedicated himself to practicing up to 14 hours a day, developing revolutionary techniques that pushed the piano to new limits. His transcendental etudes, composed during this period, are a testament to his ambition. Pieces so complex that they still challenge the best pianists today. But before we continue, let's take a break. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you the lives of geniuses like Liszt, Mozart, and Beethoven. And speaking of diving deeper into music, I recommend checking out the classical music books linked in the description. They're the best for musicians and enthusiasts, and buying through them costs you nothing extra but helps us a ton to keep creating content. Take a look and let's continue with Liszt. In the 1830s, Liszt became a cultural phenomenon. His European tours sparked what critic Heinrich Heine called Lisztomania. Crowds adored him, women fainted at his concerts, and some even collected his cigar butts as if they were relics. Liszt didn't just play, he mesmerized. But this fame also brought complications. His personal life was a whirlwind of romances and scandals. The most notable was his relationship with Marie Diagoult, a married countess who left her husband to be with him. They eloped to Switzerland in 1835, defying the social norms of the time. They had 3 children, including Cosima, who later married Richard Wagner. But their relationship was tumultuous, marked by jealousy and irreconcilable differences. During these years, Liszt composed some of his most iconic works. The Hungarian Rhapsodies, inspired by the folk music of his homeland, capture the passionate spirit of Hungary. His Annies de Pèlerinage, a cycle of piano pieces, reflect his travels through Switzerland and Italy, filled with landscapes, emotions, and memories. But Liszt wasn't just a creator. He was a philanthropist. He donated much of his earnings to charitable causes, such as the rebuilding of Cologne Cathedral or supporting struggling musicians. However, the touring life was exhausting. Constant travel, public expectations, and criticism from those who called him a mere showman began to weigh on him. In 1847, during a tour in Kiev, Liszt met Princess Caroline von Sayn-Wittgenstein, a cultured and passionate woman who would change his life. Caroline convinced him to leave touring and focus on composing and teaching. This encounter marked the end of Lisztomania and the beginning of a new chapter. In 1848, Liszt made a radical decision. He left the stage and settled in Weimar, Germany, as the court's musical director. With Caroline by his side, he turned Weimar into a cultural beacon. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Caroline was married, and her attempt to annul her marriage to Mary Liszt sparked a scandal that reached the Vatican. Despite the challenges, their relationship was a source of inspiration. In Weimar, Liszt composed some of his most innovative works, like the symphonic poems, a musical form he invented, blending music and narrative in a way never seen before. Liszt also dedicated himself to promoting other musicians. He supported Richard Wagner, premiering his operas and aiding him in times of crisis. But his innovative spirit wasn't always understood. His bold harmonies and unconventional structures baffled traditional critics, who accused him of breaking with tradition. Liszt, however, believed in the future of music. In Weimar, he was also a generous teacher, instructing dozens of students without charging them. But tragedy didn't spare him. Two of his children, Daniel and Blondine, died young, and his relationship with Caroline deteriorated under social and religious pressure. In the 1860s, Liszt sought a new path. He moved to Rome and, in 1865, took minor orders in the Catholic Church, earning the nickname Abbé Liszt. Though not a monk in the strict sense, this period reflected his search for peace and transcendence. His works from this time, like the Missa Solemnis and Totentanz, blend spirituality and drama. But even in retreat, Liszt didn't stop innovating. His late compositions, such as Nuages Gris and La Lugubre Gondola, are strikingly modern, with dissonant harmonies that foreshadow 20th century music. Liszt spent his final years between Rome, Weimar, and Budapest, teaching hundreds of students and composing until the end. His generosity was legendary. He never charged for lessons and always supported young talent. But his health declined. In 1886, during a Wagner festival in Bayreuth, Liszt contracted pneumonia. He died on July 31, 1886, at 74, leaving a legacy that transcends time. Franz Liszt was not just a pianist or composer, he was a revolutionary. He changed how concerts are presented, invented musical genres, and lived a life as intense as his music. His story teaches us that talent, when combined with passion and perseverance, can move mountains. But it also reminds us that genius comes at a cost. Sacrifices, criticism, and personal struggles. If you enjoyed this journey through Liszt's life, subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep telling the stories of great composers. And as promised, here's my final recommendation. The best books for musicians are linked in the description. From Liszt's biographies to guides for understanding classical music, these books are a treasure. Buying through our links costs you nothing extra but helps us keep creating content like this. Thanks for joining me, and see you in the next video.